Hey, let's go ahead and get started. Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the Mind Walk lecture series. Mind Walks are like TED Talks that happen monthly and explore our local recreational, natural, and cultural history. We appreciate you being here and have a great presentation lined up for you. My name is Sierra Emmerich. I'm the executive director here at the Central Coast State Parks Association, or CESPA. CESPA is based in San Luis Obispo. We're a nonprofit, and we support the 10 state parks in San Luis Obispo County in their education programming and their restoration and conservation projects and maintenance. So that can mean anything from bus transportation for school field trips to state parks or site restoration in the Pismo State Beach Monarch Grove. We also do things like museum upgrades and renovations and much, much more. So if you would like to learn more about us, please check out our website or sign up for our newsletter. And if you would like to support us, keep coming to Mind Walks. They are in person, alternating months. You can also purchase items and things from our nature stores. We have an online store. We have a headquarters in San Luis Obispo off Tank Farm, and then stores in the parks. You can also support us by becoming a friend of CESPA and by buying firewood at our state parks. So without further ado, I would like to introduce our speaker today, Mallory Claassen. Mallory is an Oceano Dunes District State Park Interpreter 2. She was born and raised in Morro Bay, and her parents are Central Coast locals. She graduated from Cal Poly with a BS in Earth Science and minor in Anthropology. Once graduated, Mallory's family connected her with the interpretation program at Oceano Dunes, where she got a job as a seasonal park interpretive specialist. Mallory has worked for the San Luis Obispo County Parks. However, she ultimately came back to state parks and the Oceano Dunes District for her current position. I have had the pleasure of working with Mallory and seeing her passion and kindness come out in all the interactions she has in the programs she runs. And it's truly a pleasure to have her here today. So please join me in welcoming Mallory.
Thanks, Sierra. Hi, everyone. We made it to Friday. Yeah. Okay, so I am going to pull up my presentation for you guys. Alrighty. Okay, so today I am really excited to talk to you about some of the exciting natural resources that you can find here at Pismo State Beach. Bivalves, butterflies, and beyond. So I thought it'd be fun to take you on a little tour, kind of going north to south through different parts of the park. But first, I kind of want to explain my position a little bit and what I do for you guys. So my job title, like Sierra said, is State Park Interpreter 2. And interpreter, it's kind of a confusing job title. So in the state park system, interpreter just means kind of like connecting visitors with the natural world around them in a way that is easy to understand and hopefully has a positive impact on them. And sort of the whole goal is to get people to care and feel connected about a certain resource, and hopefully that means that they'll be more inclined to want to protect that resource. So that sort of kind of was my basis for what I wanted to do with you all today. And if you haven't been to this part of the Central Coast, I hope after the presentation you'll find little tidbits that make you excited to want to come out and visit. So here's an overview of our park district. We are a coastal park. So on this map, I know the words and stuff are probably so tiny on your screen, but right here where my mouse is Grand Avenue, right on the beach. And where we're going to start our little tour is just north of Grand Avenue along Highway 1, right there where my smiley face is. And yep, we are going to start at the Pismo State Beach Monarch Butterfly Grove. Um, Figured it would be a good place to start since this location is known worldwide and it is one of the most popular places to visit here. And I mean, how could it not be? I don't know if some of you have stopped by the Butterfly Grove, but I'm going to talk about a few key points and then I'll give you some tips for visiting that will hopefully make your visit a little more enjoyable and go smoothly. So this grove has kind of a really unique history to it. So the area in which the Butterfly Grove is now located was once artichoke fields, artichoke crops. And there were all those eucalyptus trees you see there now were planted as a windbreak for those crops. And that was like in the mid 1880s to early 1900s. And that's along the time frame where many of the eucalyptus trees that you see here in California were planted. And then along came the Southern Pacific Railroad, which has been alongside the Butterfly Grove since 1895, and Highway 1 came thereafter. It wasn't until 1951 when the campground, the North Beach Campground, I almost said Oceano Campground, North Beach Campground was established. And it was around that time frame that the Butterfly Grove came to be as well. And it was just a small gravel path going through the grove of trees, not much. There was a little sign out front that said Butterfly Grove. And in, let's see, 1980, early 1980s is when the first state park talks were given there. And this is a name some of you might recognize, but our longtime docent, Mary Lou Gooden and Dick Simpson, they were among the first to give public talks at the Butterfly Grove. And they're both still involved with the Grove today. Very special people. Here's an aerial view. This is kind of interesting to look at it from this perspective. So you can see the green top of the butterfly trailer. So that's one of the Central Coast State Parks Association retail stores. And then you can see the little square area where the gathering benches are. So that's where we do the public talks. And you can just start to see the peaks of the grove where the monarchs overwinter. So here's another view. So now Highway 1 is running alongside the bottom of your computer screen, and the grove of eucalyptus trees is right there on your right. So these are a few quick key questions that everyone asks. Why do the monarchs migrate here? How do they even know how to get here? And where are they all going to Mexico? That's what I've heard. We get that question all the time. So we're going to answer some of those right now. So to start with our first question, why do they come here? Well, here's a picture that shows the proximity of the Butterfly Grove to the ocean. So the Grove and all the overwintering sites in California are situated really close to the ocean. And that's because there's very mild climate there, moderate temperatures year round. And it's the way the trees are situated like that, you can see visually like it's a wind block from the wind coming off the ocean. So the trees protect them. It's the perfect microclimate for them inside the Butterfly Grove. Not too hot, not too cold. And if you've ever visited, you can feel that. If the sun is shining, it gets warm enough outside of that cluster of eucalyptus trees that you're going to want to take your jacket off. But once you go inside the Butterfly Grove, you walk that trail towards the middle, it gets chilly and you want to put that jacket back on. And that's what the butterflies like. They have the opportunity to go out and sun on the front of the trees, but they can stay really nice and cool and relaxed inside the grove. Here's a map some of you may have seen if you're kind of in tune with the monarch butterflies. Um, this shows the migration routes, and so you can see there are two populations of monarch butterflies. We've got the western population and the eastern population, and they're divided by that, by the Rocky Mountains. So it's the western monarchs that are going to migrate down the coast of California, and there's over 200 overwintering sites that they can go to. The overwintering site at Pismo State Beach is one of the largest overwintering sites. And I'm going to show you guys all a slide that has some population counts on it so you can get a feel of what the numbers are. So yeah, western monarchs that we see are monarchs that migrate to us from anywhere west of the Rocky Mountains. The eastern population of monarchs, you can see that's such a wider range of area. All those monarchs are going to migrate down to the overwintering sites in Mexico. There is a little bit of a gray area in the Arizona area. Those monarchs there, some will come up to Pismo, some will go down to Mexico. They're a little bit rogue. Okay, how do the butterflies know to come here? That's a huge question, and there's actually been a lot of research done on it now. And those of you who are interested, I can send you links to some research articles that you can read in detail about this. And I'll give you my contact info at the end of the presentation so you can jot down my email or phone number. So the monarchs have this internal compass that kind of integrates the time of day and the sun's position on the horizon. And that internal compass is located in their antennae, and that information travels via neurons to the monarch's brain. So this helps the monarchs adjust and maintain their flight in kind of a southwest direction. So that is how they navigate to the sites. And a lot of this research was done by the University of Washington and the University of Massachusetts and Michigan. And again, don't hesitate to reach out to me for those articles. They're very interesting to read. So now that we've answered some of the key questions about the monarchs and the Pismo State Beach overwintering site, I want to tell you kind of about what it means to manage the site and some of the challenges that we face. So the monarchs, they're with us from November through about mid-February. And so those are the winter months. And the last several years of winters, we've seen some significant storms here on the Central Coast. And with that has come some damage to the trees. And these pictures are quite a sad sight. It's every year is not this bad. These photos were taken from in the 2016 storm, and that's when we lost one of the main overwintering, the monarch's favorite tree. It was a big, beautiful Monterey cypress tree, and it came down, and with it, it kind of toppled some of the other eucalyptus trees. And if you don't know about eucalyptus trees, these are blue gum eucalyptus. They're non-native, but they have a rather shallow root system. And California, I'm talking about winter storms, but it's like California was in a drought state for so long, and these trees were really stressed. So when you have stressed trees, a poor root system, it doesn't take a lot to make them come down. I mean, if we get sustained strong wind gusts, we'll sometimes see the trees fall. So it's a major challenge. And you know how I was showing you the tree canopy in those aerial photos? When we lose these trees, we lose parts of our windbreak. And I might get to another picture that shows a different point of view, but when you're at the butterfly grove, you can see out to the beach, and you used to not be able to do that. So when you run into problems like that, you start asking questions like, how are we going to maintain this site for the future of the monarchs? You know, how do we make this a place where they want to keep returning? And so that's what you do. You gather a team of specialists and these people who are incredibly passionate about the butterfly grove and helping the population of Western monarchs. And so is what we did was in winter of 2020, we put in new irrigation lines and planted more Monterey cypress trees and kind of a unique variety of eucalyptus, which was called Diversicolor. And so we planted about 50 trees. Hold on one second. Sorry about that, you guys. I'm in a really busy office. So, we planted about 50 trees, and this was all part of an ongoing habitat conservation plan. And the goal was to create long-term solutions to maintain the grove as overwintering habitat. And that's critical. So I want to show you guys what the official, there's a document that you all can look up and read, and it's a site management plan for Pismo State Beach. And I'm going to navigate to that. Let's see here. I wonder if I can just do it from. Okay, I hope you can see the site management plan now. So this is available online, and this is something I can send you to if you would like me to do that. I would love to. So you can see the team here on the front cover. Input and review by Danielle Bronson, Ronnie Glick, Stephanie Little. Those are all members, people I work with who are part of the Department of Parks and Rec. And Stu Weiss and Jessica Griffith and Dan Mead. And of course, it was written by Emma Pelton with the Xerces Society. So if you don't know about the Xerces Society, get connected, go visit their website. It's a wealth of information. I mean, that's where I turn to get everything I share with the public. Comes from just a few key sources, and Xerces Society is one of them. So you can scroll through this management plan, and it gives incredible detail, and it just outlines kind of the history of the grove, what the habitat is like, and what is planned in terms of like how to maintain and manage the grove. So do take a look at that. Stand by here. Okay. Okay, here's what I think some of you have been waiting for. Everyone wants to see the numbers. So this chart dates back to 1990, and it goes all the way to 2003. So you can see how the population changes over time, and you can see how it gradually has gotten lower and lower. And then there was a really drastic period in 2020, which we don't like to talk about, but it was quite a sad overwintering season. And then, but since then, it has gone up and stayed rather steady. So that's incredibly encouraging. What you don't see on here is the 2023-2024 data, and our peak there was 16,000, just over 16,000 monarch butterflies. I want to tell you a little bit about this data set. So what you're seeing are numbers from the Thanksgiving count. And the Thanksgiving count is it's a 2-week period around the Thanksgiving holiday. And that's always the peak season. So that's the peak overwintering season when we can historically it's when the most monarchs are at the Grove. And it's a team of community scientists who volunteer their time to get trained to count and go out to all the local overwintering sites and count the butterflies. And so these are the Thanksgiving count numbers, and that data is so critical so we can see the population trends and know where we're at. And or it's just, if you're interested in helping to count, please get in touch with me. And the training is always in the fall. And I would love to get you connected with that. It is so fun and so rewarding, and you'll meet some really neat people. I want to go into the overall numbers, and then I'm going to talk more about why that number was so low in 2020 and what we can do about it. But that 2020 year, the entire population of Western monarchs was about 2,000. 2,000. I'm not just talking at the Pismo State Beach Butterfly Grove. I'm talking the entire Western population of monarchs. And let's see. It has gone way up since then. So in, let's see, 2023, we had 330,000 monarchs. So that's a good number. And I got all this information from Xerces. I can't say it enough. If you guys want to go read some fascinating articles, every time they post charts like this with population counts, they have a blog post that's associated with it. And those blog posts give you all the background information. And I'm going to show you some of that now. So when the numbers are low, these are some of the reasons, and this is what you'll read about on Xerces. So they face many threats. The main ones are breeding habitat loss, overwintering habitat loss, climate change, which is affecting some of their behavioral patterns and migratory patterns, pesticides, natural enemies, and so some of these things are really big things that you're like, oh man, I don't know how I can help with this. But if you're looking at these numbers and you're caring about the monarch butterflies and all pollinators who face these challenges, there is one very tangible thing that you can do, and it's to plant a pollinator garden. And what that means is you plant native flowering nectar plants in your yard. And not only will your yard look beautiful, but you're going to be fostering this habitat for pollinators, and you're just going to help them to be successful. And if you live near the coastline, you don't want to include milkweed into your pollinator garden. But if you're someone who lives inland, including native milkweed would be the right thing to do. If you have questions about planting a pollinator garden, please get in touch with me. I have tons of resources I can share with you. Why should you care? Well, because monarchs are beautiful, they have a cultural significance and really deep meaning for many. And if you visited the Butterfly Grove, especially during peak season when those tree canopies are just covered in those beautiful clusters of monarchs, then you might understand kind of that feeling that I'm talking about. But, pollinators, they're responsible for the reproduction of over 75% of the world's flowering plants, and that includes a lot of food crops. And so they're critical. And planting a pollinator garden is a very easy thing to do. It's a fun thing you can do. If you have a family, you can do it together. You can do it at school as a project. And if you come out to the Butterfly Grove, I guarantee you make one visit, you're going to be inclined to do everything you can to help that population of butterflies. Okay, here's my know before you go. I hope that this is helpful to some of you. The first thing I wrote down was, Please pack your patience. It is such a popular place to visit and parking is almost non-existent. So, drive slowly and be observant. And you're welcome to bring your dogs. Just keep them on a leash and make sure they're under your control. Um, there's there's fencing that keeps people and pets out of the sensitive areas, but it's all like open split rail fencing, so it'd be easy for your dog to and kiddos to go beyond the fence. So just keep an eye on everything. Um, just remember that the Butterfly Grove is a really special place, and some people come there to really relax and escape. And so just be kind of quiet and sort of mindful of all the other people there. One of the most important things and kind of a problem that we've been seeing is uh, just really avoid the urge to handle the monarchs. If you go in the morning time and it's kind of a really crisp, cold winter morning, you'll probably see some butterflies sitting on the ground. And we have a team of environmental scientists that and our docents that come early and they scoop up the little butterflies and move them off the trail so that they don't get stepped on. It might seem kind of like a strange thing to hear me say, but they're hard to see. They're hard to see when they're sitting on the path. You know, there's sometimes some eucalyptus tree litter, and when the butterfly's wings are closed up behind them, the underside of their wings is kind of this pale brown color, and they are easy to step on. So we try and move them out of the way before too many people get to the butterfly grove, but all that to say, just refrain from handling them. You actually need a permit with Fish and Wildlife to do so. Um, and even with the best of intentions, you might know the proper way to handle them and move them off to safety, but other people watching you, they're going to see what you're doing and they might think that it's an okay thing to do. And before you know it, you have people picking up the butterflies and putting them on their shoulder for a picture moment. And that's what we're trying to avoid. Um, so if you are at the Butterfly Grove, it's such a busy place. If you're there and there are all kinds of different people that come through there in a day. If you see something that warrants like help from a park ranger, something like that, something that's kind of alarming you, something that might be making you nervous. If you see people doing things they shouldn't be doing at the Butterfly Grove, you can utilize the dispatch phone line, which I listed there on the screen. That is a non-emergency phone line that will go straight to state parks dispatchers, and they will receive your call, ask you some questions, hear what you have to say, and they will send a ranger out to assist. And the neat thing is, our ranger station is just like a mile away from the Butterfly Grove, so super close. So if you see something weird going on, don't hesitate to call. But just remember too, that's a non-emergency line. So if you are experiencing a 911 emergency, call 911. Okay. Another thing that we just started doing in recent years, that not everyone knows about, we do close the Butterfly Grove if we are experiencing wind gusts over 20 miles per hour. Um, we are just being uh, using kind of an abundance of caution at the Butterfly Grove. Like I said, we get such high levels of visitation there, and we just want to make sure, um, it's everyone's responsibility to be observant and practice safety, but um, we choose to close the Butterfly Grove when we get high wind gusts because those eucalyptus trees can sometimes be a little unpredictable. And so you'll see, I mean, check the weather before you come, definitely. But you'll know if the Butterfly Grove is closed, there will be gates closed and there'll be a little sign out front. So if you see that, just know it's weather related and we will get you back in there as soon as we can. Okay, so mentioned, I am not a subject matter specialist. Like I said, I have a few key resources I go to gather all the information I need to share with our docents, to share with you guys. And these are my resources. So I encourage you to use these too. The Xerces Society, Monarch Joint Venture, Western Monarch Count. That's where you can find a lot of information about those Thanksgiving counts I was talking about. The Western Monarch Trail. And also something, if you want something tangible, if you like books to like read, take notes in, mark things, I encourage you to get a copy of the Pismo Monarch Butterflies Magic Myths and Monarchs. You can get that at Sierra was talking about the Central Coast State Parks Association online store. That's where you can get a copy of that. You can also grab a copy while you're visiting the Butterfly Grove. It's available there at the Monarch trailer. And that book was written with Francis Villablanca and some of our longtime docents. So it is a great thing to have if you're a lover of the Monarch butterfly. I've got a copy and I use it all the time. Okay, guys, we are ready to move to stop number 2 on our journey here. So we're going to be moving a little bit south. So our smiley face is now on the shoreline just south of Pier Avenue. Maybe some of you can guess where we're going. But I'm taking you to the Pismo State Beach shoreline to talk about Pismo clams. This is I enjoy talking about the monarchs, but this is another topic that I'm really passionate about. So, what is a clam? Well, a clam is a bivalve mollusk that has a 2-part halved shell with a soft body invertebrate inside. And hopefully this visual helps you understand the clam a little bit better. They're kind of unique. They have a pair of siphons, which are these tube-like structures, and you can see them in blue in the picture. And they use the in-current siphon to take in water and food, and the ex-current siphon is what expels waste and water and sand. So Pismo clams are filter feeders, and they eat detritus from disintegrating plants and animal cells. They eat phytoplankton, zooplankton, and different kinds of bacteria. So those are their siphons, and sometimes you can see their siphons just poking above the sand. There's a biologist I have the pleasure of interacting with and doing trainings with for he works for Fish and Wildlife, and he says sometimes he can spot the siphons of the clams when he's over by the Pismo Pier. So maybe you can check that out. Their shells are opened and closed. They're attached with a hinge, and I have there, gets you a close up here. So there's the hinge ligament, and they use that adductor muscle to help them open and close their shells. They have a digging foot, which they use for movement and to rebury themselves. And it's just kind of a big muscle. They will bury themselves about 2 to 6 inches deep in the intertidal zone. And if you didn't know, Pismo clams are broadcast spawners. So that means fertilization occurs externally when the male releases sperm and the female releases eggs into the water. And the number of eggs kind of depends on the size of the clam. But the spawning period, we're actually in it right now. It's late June through November. And the larvae, they'll settle on the bottom of the floor, the sand, and kind of attach themselves there with byssal threads. And they'll stay there for a couple months, and then the byssal threads sort of disappear, and the clams will bury themselves. And it actually doesn't take long before they become sexually mature. It'll just be just after the first year. So here's a range map. Now, the historical range of the Pismo clam was all the way from Stinson Beach in Marin County down to Baja California, and that includes the Channel Islands. But the current range is more like Monterey Bay down to the San Diego area, and still including the Channel Islands. And they like Pismo clams, they're found on kind of low sloping exposed beaches, so it has to be the right type of beach for them to be on. Like just the southernmost part of our park district is Osa Lake, and those beaches there, if you've been there, you know it's kind of, they're more sloping and steep, very steep, and so that there's less clams down there. Okay, this, I meant to find a couple more pictures to put on this slide, but I wanted to show you how diverse the Pismo clam shells, their colors and patterns are. Oftentimes people will visit the visitor center and they'll show us photos and they'll be like, is this a Pismo clam? And we'll be, yeah, that's a clam. And then they'll show a couple other photos and they're like, well, what are these? Well, those are all Pismo clams. So, I mean, look at all the colors and patterns. I think they're so beautiful. And my favorite ones are the ones with the stripes. I feel like I've really lucked out if I find one with the stripes. Their shells, if you've ever held one, they're really thick, very strong, and that's a characteristic of the Pismo clam. If you've ever picked up actually, I have one. If you've ever picked up a gaper clam, hopefully you can see, just see how thin it is. These are very thin, very fragile. This is a gaper clam. This is a Pismo clam, very thick. Try and hold them up together. Hopefully you can kind of see. It's hard when we're not in person, but the Pismo clamshell is very thick and has a lot more weight to it. So there are really fine, thin, concentric growth lines, a yellowish tan kind of varnish. And that one I was just showing you, you know, as the clams get older, they sort of lose their varnish coating. This one has small patches here and there where I see shine. But over time, they kind of lose that. Okay, this is a chart that I find interesting. This one, well, first of all, this is a chart that Derek Stein made. He works for Fish and Wildlife as a biologist. And so he put this together in his presentation that he did for staff and docents here a couple months ago. So this kind of shows on this vertical axis is size in inches, and the horizontal axis is number of years. So a clam reaches maturity around a little after the first year. And then what everyone wants to know is, how long does it take for a Pismo clam to be of legal size? Well, there are some variables, right? But generally speaking, we can say that it takes about 6 to 10 years for a Pismo clam to get at legal size. And a little bit longer if we're talking about Pismo clams north of the San Luis Obispo, Monterey County line. Up there, their legal size for a Pismo clam is actually 5 inches. For us here in San Luis Obispo County, it's 4.5. If you guys are interested in reading more about kind of the aging of clams and things like that, I would steer you to the Pismo Clam Enhanced Status Report that Fish and Wildlife puts out. And again, I don't mean to sound like a broken record, but I would love to send you that link if you're interested in it. You can find it on the Fish and Wildlife website, but it's kind of hard to navigate to. Every time I go to look for it, it sort of takes me a while to uncover there on their website. So if you want to read that status report of the Pismo clam that includes a lot of information about their aging, let me know and I'll send that to you. Okay, so long before clamming even became a popular recreational pastime, Native Americans actually harvested the clams for thousands of years. And clams were so abundant here on the Central Coast that they were even used as pig feed. I can't even wrap my head around that. I mean, look at these photos. Look at those piles of clams and how large they are. And not only what is shown there on the sand, but they've got bags and bags of clams. So, I mean, all that to say, in 1947, Pismo Beach deemed itself the clam capital of the world. You can kind of see why. And it was about a year later in 1948 that the sport bag limit went down to 10 clams, which is still what the limit is today. Now, for comparison purposes, the bag limit in 1911 was 200 clams, and that went down to 50, then 36, and then 15 in the late 1920s. So, like I said, currently we're at 10 clams per person per day. And Pismo clams and Pacific razor clams make up most of the catch by clammers that are out there now. Clamming was a historic pastime like since the early 1900s and was really popular through the early 1970s. And then it was just kind of like the clams seemed to disappear. And you'll hear there's some local, some local tales about it, but several factors contributed to that decline. So some of those over harvesting, and that's not just from humans. I mean, it was sea otters also. There was a boom in the sea otter population and they were eating a lot of clams. So, but clearly people were taking a lot of clams off the beach. So over harvesting, illegal removals, so that's poaching, and other environmental conditions caused that decline. So even though you couldn't find any legal size clams, technically it was still a recreational activity. And then all of a sudden, in recent years, the clam population just started returning. And it's been so fascinating to watch. And it's also been incredibly challenging. But those of you who are local to South County, maybe you take a walk on the beach in the morning, or this is your favorite place to walk your dog or something. I'm sure you've noticed people out there clamming, but also perhaps you've seen something like this. And this is what we're kind of unofficially calling unburying events. And it's something kind of strange that's happening. We just get a lot of surfaced clams, and it happens periodically. And sometimes it's a few, sometimes it's 100, and sometimes it's thousands. Fish and Wildlife and others have been collecting data on this and kind of recording when these events happen. And so we can see that it happens mostly in March and August. So generally speaking, in the spring and summer months. And there are a few areas where this tends to occur more often, and that is just north of the Pier Avenue entrance to the beach, and also near the two creeks on the beach. So Pismo Creek to the north and Arroyo Grande Creek to the south. And you can see how surface clams can kind of pose like a challenge when trying to protect the resource. I mean, the first thing that comes into my mind is like, wow, look at all these undersized clams and how easy it is just to grab them. So a lot of people, they are kind of like, it is kind of an issue with poaching. But currently there's a collaborative study going on about this unburying, and that study includes Fish and Wildlife Shellfish Lab, and California State Parks. And so we're working together to collect data. So what happens is 2 different times before those peak months that I was talking about, so March and August, a team will go out and collect a certain number of clams and a variety of sizes of the clams. And those are getting sent off to be studied. And so the whole purpose is to figure out why this is happening. You know, it's like, it's exciting to have the clam population return, but you have all these big questions, right? And so this is one of them. And so I don't have answers for you yet on that. This is something I get asked about all the time. What I do know is that there should be some results from this study, I think in the fall. I know that, oh man, Sierra might be able to help me remember too, but I can't remember I think it was last year or maybe even the year before, the way time flies, but there was a virtual mind walk with Derek Stein, and I think Fish and Wildlife Warden Matt Gill might have co-presented with him, but there's that recorded clam presentation is housed on the Central Coast State Parks Association website. And Derek is the man when it comes to Pismo clam data. And he is looking to kind of take his presentation that he did for us on the virtual mind walk and update it with his new data sets. And I believe he was kind of aiming for this fall to get that all finished for us. So I'm really looking forward to that. Okay, so like I said, I've already mentioned it, poaching. And if you live around here, I'm sure you've heard about this. There have been a couple cases that have kind of hit the news a little bit, but it's sort of a semi-regular occurrence here. So with an abundance of clams is kind of coming more poaching. So check out this chart here. And this is a chart from Fish and Wildlife. So on the vertical axis is number of clams seized, and then the horizontal axis is the year. So you can see, and I know you guys are probably like, oh wow, this is outdated. Yes, this is data from 2016 to 2020, so it's already been 4 years. But I bet you the poaching numbers would look very similar to what it was in 2020. So if someone is in possession of a clam that's under 4.5 inches in diameter, then that is illegal. And so let's see, this chart that Fish and Wildlife did, here's the number of violations on the vertical axis and then by month on the horizontal axis. So citations issued, so you can see, and again, this data set's 2016 to 2020. You can see most of the citations issued were in the like more high visitation periods to the beach. So June through September. Yeah, so there's just a lot more people down there, a lot more activity down there. There's negative tides, long daylight hours. And so I think all that kind of contributes to the increase in poaching and poaching citations. So the reason I wanted to really talk about poaching, because I think the more people that are aware of these issues, then the more we can kind of be proactive about it. So there are fish and wildlife officers and state park peace officers that drive up and down the beach on a regular basis. And the fish and wildlife trucks, those are the black ones you see with the fish and wildlife crest on the side. And most of our state park ranger trucks are white with the ranger star on the side. So you'll see them, and sometimes they're sitting back, kind of observing. They sort of know they know all the tricks, and so they know what to sort of keep an eye out for. But you know what? There's a lot more visitors on the beach than there are officers. And so we could really use your help. If you notice that it looks like someone's kind of partaking in some illegal activity and you think they're collecting undersized clams, there's a way you can anonymously report that. And that's by calling the CalTIP hotline. And this is something that Fish and Wildlife puts out, and I've called it, and it's really easy, and it goes to a dispatcher, and you just tell them what you're seeing, and they'll probably ask you some questions too, just to get like a better description. But definitely put that number in your phone if you're a person who frequents our shoreline. 1-888-334-2258. And use that phone number. Don't approach people. Approaching people is not the safest way to go about it. If you are witnessing something kind of funny, just call, and one of the officers will come out to check on it. I really want to show you guys this video. Let me just, oh, nuts. I don't really have a lot of time. I'm going to skip this and come back to it if we have time at the end. But there's another thing you can do to help the clams, and that's to rebury surfaced clams. And this video I was going to show you will teach you how to do it. But if you see surfaced clams on the beach, of course, you're not going to do this when you see thousands of surface clams. But if you're just walking and you see a couple, what you can do is dig a hole at least 2 inches deep. And remember how I was showing you that photo of the clam anatomy? The hinge part of the clamshell will face towards the ocean. And if you bury it at least 2 inches deep with that hinge facing towards the ocean, that will help the clam orient itself correctly, so its digging foot will come down and it can dig itself deeper. And like right on the top side of the hinge is a ligament, and you'll see it. It's a bulge. It's a bulge on the right above the hinge. And so you want the ligament to be facing up. So when your hinge is pointing towards the ocean, you want the ligament facing up, and that will orient it perfectly. Okay, so know before you go. Everyone wants to clam. You can get your catch of 10 clams per person per day in sometimes an hour. And so if you want to go have fun and clam, just know the rules before you go. So definitely have your fishing license, have your fixed measuring gauge, and know the rules. If you uncover an undersized clam, make sure you rebury it right in the location that you dug it from. And just remember, 10 clams per person per day. Don't share a bucket or a bag with anyone. Keep all your clams separately. Okay, here's some of the resources that I always refer to for clam stuff. I've already mentioned the Pismo Clam Enhanced Status Report. That is a must read if you're interested in the Pismo clams. And then go look up Derek's presentation on the Central Coast State Parks Association website. And that's a great video to watch. And it's still, even though he did it a couple years ago, it's all still very relevant. Fish and Wildlife also put out a frequently asked question page for the Pismo clam that is an incredible resource. And that is all on the wildlife.ca.gov website. Okay, you guys, last little bit of our journey here. This last part won't take us long to go through. We're traveling far south. I'm skipping you way down to Oso Flaco Lake. And this place is incredible. If you want to go to Oso Flaco Lake, I encourage you to pop into the Oceano Visitor Center right there at Oceano Campground before you go down and grab yourself a self-guided brochure so you can take that with you and it'll just kind of enhance your experience down there. Oso Flaco Lake is designated for hiking, fishing, and all non-motorized uses. So it's on the southern part of our park district, so just south of the Oceano Dunes State Vehicular Recreation Area. It's about 800 acres, and it's part of the grander Guadalupe Nipomo Dune Complex, and that dune complex in total is about 22,000 acres. So this is the northern end of it. Stretches about 18 miles of that entire complex stretches about 18 miles of coastline. It's incredible, all the way from Pismo State Beach down to Point Sal. Here's a quick little map of the trail. The trail is just under a mile in length. It's a boardwalk style trail. There's a parking lot. There's restrooms right at the parking lot, and then farther down on the trail, right when you get almost approach the overlook. So it's accessible. The only thing is you can't take your dog here. Not even on a leash. They just don't allow dogs in this part of the park. Okay, so here is the Osoflaco Lake Bridge. So this bridge was actually built by Nature Conservancy volunteers back in 1993, I think. And it's made out of a recycled plastic lumber material. Sadly, we did have some serious vandalism occur this year, but luckily repairs were made pretty quickly, and we were able to get the bridge. Our maintenance team was able to get the bridge repaired and get people back out there again. Now, if you are an educator or like a Girl Scout or Boy Scout troop leader, something like that, this might be a good space for you. So as you walk down the trail, almost to the end, right by where the other set of restrooms is located, is this great open space with picnic tables and benches. So our hope here was that people would use it as like a kind of like a little educational space and a place for people to gather and kind of maybe do some nature journaling, or for a class to sort of take a minute and have a lesson. So also it's just a great picnic spot. That's what I've used it for a few times. Okay, so when you walk towards the end of the trail, there's this great overlook. It gets you just high enough so you can do some whale watching, which I would highly encourage this time of year. And also, if it's a clear day, like especially like on a fall morning, if you're looking north, you can see all the way to Point San Luis. And then if you look south, you can see all the way to Point Sal and Mussel Rock. It's just such a special little part of the shoreline. This place, I mean, if you just enjoy being outdoors, it's a great place to go. It's a fantastic picnic spot. But if you're a birder, my oh my, you have got to go out here. So I want to talk to you about two birds, and the first one being the California least tern. So you can often spot these birds this time of year during the spring and summer months, right on the bridge railing. Right there on the bridge railing. So if you, before you start walking on the bridge, if you just take a peek, pay attention to see if these birds are sitting there so you can look at them before you kind of startle them. That's the California least tern. And the terns and the western snowy plovers, they're nesting along the shoreline in this area during this time of year. So that's why you can see them here. The California least terns are listed as a federally endangered species, and their breeding season is April through August. So we're currently in the breeding season. Terns have a very unique courtship practice, and it's the male will have, well, first there's an aerial display where he's showing off, and then he has a fish in his mouth. And he kind of like parades around the female with this little fish in his mouth. And it's a pretty unique sight. I don't have time to show you guys the video today, but look that up if you're interested. It's quite a sight. So terns can be identified by their black cap and their yellow bill. They have gray wings with a black outer edge. The bird measures just less than 10 inches in length, and their wingspan is about 4 inches. And they forage in nearshore waters and estuaries and river mouths. And so that They feed on small fish like top smelt or little anchovies. I find the characteristic that's makes it easiest for me to spot them is their cap and their yellow bill. The second bird species I wanted to tell you guys about is the American white pelican. And I just want you to be aware of these guys because it, it it is so fun to go down to Oso in the winter months and see them there. So they're a migratory bird. So the American white pelicans west of the Rockies will migrate to the Pacific coast. Um, and you'll see them at Oso Lake during the winter time. And they have a really unique way that they eat their food. They work together. So I kind of sometimes call it synchronized swimmers. You'll see them almost circle up and swim in a circle and kind of bob around and all in synchronization. And is what they're doing is kind of wrangling up and corralling some small fish that they can then scoop and feed on. So it's pretty cool. This picture, now I know there are other pelicans in the photo, but I wish there was something else in this photo so you could get a size reference. But their wingspan is 9.5 feet. And that's the second largest wingspan of any North American bird. The largest wingspan goes to the California condor, but these guys come in second. And the adult pelicans will weigh like 15 to 20 pounds, roughly. But I mean, if you've ever had a pelican fly over you, you know they are a big bird. So for me, that's a must see during the winter. I love going out there and taking a walk and watching the pelicans. So Oso Lake, know before you go. The trail and parking lots open from sunrise to sunset. There's a $5 day use fee, but if there's not a kiosk attendant there and you can't find a way to pay, don't stress out about it. The rangers know that there are issues with that down there, and they're not going to put citations on people's vehicles when those payment obstacles are happening. Like I kind of said, like observe animals without interrupting them. So kind of be observant, look and see what animals are ahead of you before you trudge along on the pathway. And a great way to observe wildlife from a distance is with binoculars. So definitely, if you have a pair of binoculars, don't go to Oso without your binoculars. I think this is kind of a given too. Don't feed the wildlife. And we already mentioned this, but dogs are not allowed at Oso Lake trail or beach area. There's just too much sensitive habitat down there. And we just couldn't allow dogs in that zone. Weather, just as any beach location, can be super variable, but man, that wind really howls down at Oso. So probably ideal to plan like a early morning visit or a late afternoon visit. But either way, dress in layers and be prepared kind of with a hat and some sunscreen. I always like to bring water and snacks so then I know I can just sort of take my time. There are restrooms available, which is a huge plus, but just know that there's no running water. And hopefully those tips will kind of help you be successful for your visit. Also, just know, as in any rural location, don't leave any valuables in your vehicle before you head out on your journey. So this was a virtual tour of some of the resources of Pismo State Beach, but we have a lot of really fun real life tours that hopefully you can participate in someday if you haven't already. So visit the Central Coast State Parks Association website to view the listings of Adventures with Nature programs. And some of the ones I have listed here on this screen are the ones we do at Oceano Dunes District where I work, but there's a whole bunch that are offered at San Luis Obispo Coast District as well. And man, there's something for everybody. So definitely take a peek at the program calendar, and I think you'll really enjoy those. Okay, you guys, that's it for me. This is my contact info. Please reach out to me if you want any of my resources. I'd be more than happy to share them with you. If you want to talk about anything further, feel free to call me. I really don't mind. So that's my work cell number. And thank you so much.